Mr. President, the images that we've seen from our own country over the past few days are shocking and heartbreaking. They don't reflect our values as a nation. I'm glad the president is reversing course. I'm glad he's signing something, putting a stop to his administration's cruel, pointless, and heartless policy of separating children from their parents at the border. That's just the beginning of the work that needs to be done to undo the damage that the president's policy has inflicted on these children and to begin to create a more human and humane immigration solution. Any parent can tell you that being separated from a child is one of the worst things you can imagine. We've seen pictures and heard the sounds of crying children, some still in diapers. When I first heard that audio clip, I think all of us remember the first time we heard it. When we first heard that audio clip of children screaming and crying for their parents, I almost couldn't listen to it. As an American, as a human being, as a father, as a grandfather, it was revolting. It should be hard to listen to. We should recoil at those terrible sounds. The second it's not heard, the second we shrug our shoulders and do nothing at the sounds of little children wailing, that's the second we lose our humanity. It's hard for us to listen to. If it's hard for us to listen to, if it makes us uncomfortable, that's nothing. That's nothing compared to what it must mean and what it must feel like and what those parents are going through. Yesterday, the administration reported that some 2,300 children were taken from their parents at the border in just a single month. Think about everybody in this body has gone to a school, and probably everybody in this body has gone to a grade school to visit. And remember what it's like to walk down the hall or walk into a gym or walk into a classroom and see dozens or even hundreds of children. Think about that, though. Thinking of walking into a school and seeing happy children, and lots of them, dozens of children, singing or talking or playing on a playground. And now think of these 2,300 children that were taken from their parents at the border in a single month. From May 5th to June 9th, 5 weeks, 60 kids every single day on the average. 60 kids yesterday, 60 kids the day before, 60 kids the day before that. We don't know how many since June 9th, but from May 5th to June 9th, 60 kids every single day. Signing something today, clearly the president did the right thing. Clearly the president did it under great political pressure. Clearly the president never admitted he was wrong about it. That's not something that, unlike most human beings, I know he would do. But signing something today doesn't magically reunite those families overnight. It's not like these children now, as you've watched children, any of my colleagues watch children at a grade school run out to the car when their mom picks them up or run out to the playground when their dad visits joyfully. These are kids, they won't magically reunite with their families overnight. It won't do this, signing this order that the president clearly so reluctantly signed, won't undo the trauma those children have endured. We still don't have good answers to what's happened to those kids, what kinds of conditions they're living under. We've heard reports of siblings ripped from their parents being told they can't hug each other, or of staff being told they're not allowed to comfort these children by touching them and hugging them. Imagine that, a child's not out of diapers, taken away from her mother. You're not even allowed to comfort her. You're just supposed to let her scream. That's inhumane, it's un-American, it's just counter to everything most of us, at least in this body, if not the White House, have been taught. Dr. Colleen Kraft, the current president of the American Academy of Pediatrics, she was past medical director of the Health Network at Cincinnati Children's in my state. She warned that the toxic stress resulting from these separations can slow down brain development. She called it a form of child abuse. Today, I demanded answers from Secretary of Health and Human Services, Secretary of Department of Homeland Security about what they're doing to care for the mental, physical, and emotional well-being of the thousands of traumatized children in their custody. This chapter isn't closed. You don't just say, thank you, Mr. President, for finally doing the right thing. Everything's fine. We've got to track those 2,300 children for that month period. There's been almost 2 weeks since then, and more children. We've got to find these children. We've got to comfort them. We've got to examine them. Pediatricians who warn that this is some kind of child abuse because it can slow down brain development. These children have already seen horrors that the rest of us can't imagine. Some of these parents are seeking asylum in America. They're fleeing violence. They're just looking for a safe place for their children. Who knows how many of these children already were traumatized because they lived in a war zone. They lived in an area with all kinds of violence from drug wars. They're pulled out of that. They're traveling with almost nothing but the clothes on their back and very little, with one or both parents coming north, not knowing what's going to happen each day, seeing all kinds of things that almost none of us growing up have seen. Then they're separated from their parents at the border. The way we keep our country safe is by going after terrorists and violent criminals, and not by turning our backs on families and children just like ours, whose only goal is to escape violence and persecution. We have a lot of work to do to fix our immigration system, but tearing families apart won't solve anything. We need to come together. We need to work on a bipartisan solution that recognizes we aren't going to deport 13 million people who are already here, but we can secure our borders. We can create a pathway for people to earn citizenship if they follow the law, they have a job, and they pay taxes. My son-in-law, Alejandro, lives in Cranston, Rhode Island, the boyhood home of our colleague, Senator Jack Reed. He was 10 years old, maybe 11 years old. He came to this country. His mother was a journalist. She had her life threatened as a journalist in El Salvador. She fled their country to come to our country. The parents then moved to New York, came to New York to come to our country, and we embraced people like that who were refugees, whose lives we could save, and who could contribute so much to our country, as Alejandro has, and his mother and his whole family has contributed to this country. He is the father of 2 of our grandchildren now. This may be a complicated issue, but we're a country of values that protects people. We're a haven for so many people. We've made a difference in so many lives because of who we are and what our values are. Surely it's a complicated issue, but the administration's only made it so much worse. They've added the challenge of undoing the damage they've done in working to get those children back to their parents and helping to make them whole. I hope that we're seeing the end of this heartlessness. I hope this just isn't a one-step pullback by the president and then more attacks on immigrants, more attacks on children. We have a lot of work to do to pick up the pieces and reunite families. The administration needs to provide answers immediately as to how it's going to make that happen and end the cries of these children with comforting words and much more. I want to close with a story. I got a message on Facebook from an Ohio, and he had heard the tragic story of a 10-year-old with Down syndrome who was reportedly separated from her parents at the border. That's barbaric, but this Ohioan gives me hope. He said he and his wife have a daughter with Down syndrome. They wanted to offer to take in the little girl and her mother and have them stay with their family in Ohio. Imagine that. Those are the values of Ohioans. Those are the values of North Carolinians, and those are the values of Americans. It's not the values of a president who, out of whatever motive, has separated these families. That's the state and the country that I love, this family that wrote to us. I know there are so many more Americans out there who feel the same way, who practice compassion, whose hearts break for these children. It's time for their government to step up and reflect those values of this great country.